Well, hey there everyone, it's GG Sober Sun here at the beach again. First time in too long for sunset. April the 4th. AA thought for the day from the 24 hours a day book. When I came into AA, I found men and women who had been through the same things I had been through. But now they were thinking more about how they could help others than they were about themselves. They were a lot more unselfish than I ever was. By coming to meetings and associating with them, I began to think a little less about myself and a little more about other people. I also learned that I didn't have to depend on myself alone to get out of the mess I was in. I could get a greater strength than my own. Am I now depending less on myself and more on God? God, man, I couldn't do it without him. And in some sense, he's doing it for me. Whenever I surrender whatever it is, the struggle, whatever the struggle in my life is, whenever I surrender it to him, he's doing it for me. Yes, do I have to take actions? Absolutely. But if I'm surrendered to him, it doesn't feel like effort. You know, it's action, yes, but it's not necessarily effort. And to a certain extent, that's how I was raised, you know, good or bad. It's kind of like, yeah, if I want your opinion, I'll tell you what it should be. If I want your goals and plans and aspirations, I'll tell you what they should be. You know, from the time I was told that I came home with a flyer from school to say that I wanted to wrestle at the age of 5. I don't ever remember this. Now, that's what my dad told me. I have a feeling he, being the youngest of 5 and the only boy, was afraid that I'd be tender-hearted and a mama's boy like he was. And I hate to put it that way, but that's the common vernacular. And I've come to find out over the years that his dad was pretty harsh on him, you know, and pretty impatient with him, as many fathers are. You know, we have high expectations of our sons. That's one of the reasons I've just really kind of gone the opposite direction with my son, just kind of laid off of him. And I know he thinks that I set high standards for him. I want the best for him, for sure. And sometimes that comes across as, what you need to do is, and for this alcoholic, that is the worst thing you can say. However, growing up, it was like, by the time I was 12, I was 6 feet tall, and my dad was like, okay, time to play basketball now. And so I wrestled from the age of 5. I took 1 year off somewhere in there. But at the age of 13 is when I switched to basketball, and mainly because he said, you got to get a basketball scholarship to go to college because I can't afford to send you. I mean, that was plenty of time to save up for me to go to college. But he just told me flat out, 12 years old, you know, you got to get a basketball scholarship. But here's the thing. Maybe one day you can play in the NBA if you're good enough, kind of thing. So give it your all. And what kid wouldn't fall for that, you know, especially being of above average height. But I wasn't I was above average height, but not of extraordinary height that playing in the NBA would be an increased possibility. You know, I'm 6'5". That's about the size of a point guard the guy that dribbles the ball up in any other, it's just crazy. Anyway, so I kind of have often said that growing up, I was kind of an automaton waiting for further instructions. I joined the military, and guess what? Same thing. Just stand by, wait further instructions, kind of thing. And so it's taken quite a while for me to develop the muscle of setting goals, I guess, and doing the day in and day out Atomic Habits that I'm currently reading about in the book of the same name by James Clear. Awesome book, and I highly recommend it to anyone. Way better habit book than I've ever read or heard of. So, but again, can't do without God. Waiting further instructions. And the other thing about AA is it's one of the something I learned in one of the stories in the back of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, oddly enough on page 420, where it says, I never just sit and wait for an answer from God. I ask in prayer, and then I do whatever's in front of me. And however it turns out, that's God's will for me. I never just sit and wait for an answer to God's will for my life. I ask and then do whatever's in front of me. However it turns out, that was God's will for me. And one of my former sponsors that passed away in 2019, he would say, clean house. And when we're not doing a 4th, 5th, or 10th step, then we literally clean our house. That ties in with something that Jordan Peterson says in his book. Dr. Jordan Peterson says in his book, 12 Habits for Life, not 12 habits, but 12 rules for life, where he's like, first clean up your room before you try to save the world or whatever. And it's so, it makes a lot of sense, take care of what's within your sphere of influence before you try to venture out. Or at the same time, as long as you're taking care of what's within your sphere of influence and the big rocks in life, according to the 7 habits of highly effective people, the big rocks in life, then all the other little things will take care of themselves as well. But you'll be more effective and more valid, I guess, as you go forward in life and try to advocate for what you believe in the world at large. So big stuff there, but it all comes down to a relationship with God as you understand God. And I say that not because I believe that any faith, any religion or what have you is, and I know it's controversial, but I believe, I follow my faith because I believe it's the correct one for me, and there are very specific reasons for that. In my case, for example, I don't know of any faith that answers the question of how a perfect and holy, omnipotent being, omniscient, all-knowing being, can allow somebody like me into her presence, then in the 6th and 7th step, how are my wrongdoings removed? How is there an atonement, I guess, for my wrongdoings? than Christianity. That's, to me, is how it, my faith, my specific religious faith base addresses that directly. But onward and upward. Meditation for the day. You cannot help others unless you understand the person you are trying to help. To understand the problems and temptations of others, you must have been through them yourself. I don't agree with that, but I'll read on. You must do all you can to understand others. I agree with that. You must study their backgrounds, their likes, their dislikes, their reactions, and their prejudices. When you see their weaknesses, do not confront the person with them. Share your own weaknesses, sins, and temptations, and let other people find their own convictions. Most of that I agree with, but one of the first jobs that I took after I graduated, I call it graduation rather than retirement because I'm too young. After I graduated from the Air Force, I worked in two drug and alcohol rehab facilities. And, the patients would get really wrapped around the axle about, well, this so-and-so counselor doesn't know where I've been. They can't understand me. Well, there might be other reasons why they suck as a counselor, right? But don't use the excuse that they can't help you because they haven't walked in your shoes. That's stepping out in that I'm special, unique, and different kind of thing that will kill us. They say that we need to look for the similarities rather than the differences when we go to meetings and stuff like that. And we will find similarities because we are all more alike than we are different when it comes right down to it. And so keep that in mind. But what I used to tell the patients is, if you're drowning, do you want to know whether or not the lifeguard has drowned before surrendering to their help? But there is a thing that, that's kind of not relevant here, but it was the saying that, if a drowning person, you're trying to rescue a drowning person, they can drown you as well in their desperation to stay alive. And that's very true as well. Keep that in mind when you're trying to help somebody. But if they are truly surrendered to the fact that they are drowning, physically drowning in water, or drowning in their own addiction, they will surrender. And as my buddy Waddell says, when the time is right, there's nothing you can do wrong in an effort to help them. And there's nothing you can say wrong. But if the time's not right, the timing's not right, and they're not truly surrendered, there's really nothing you can say right. Because they're going to come up with all kinds of rationalizations and justifications, as we all do as addicts and alcoholics, even years into recovery. So keep that in mind. But I don't believe that you cannot help others unless you understand the person you're trying to help. You don't have to understand them. You just let the Spirit guide you with regards to what you share with them about your story, right? In the chapter, The Family Afterwards, we read it today. We read in it today at my home group meeting. We did a big book study. But there's a passage that says, cling to the thought that in God's hands the dark past is the greatest possession you have. With it you can avert death and misery for others. In God's hands. Always remember that. In God's hands. See, I thought I'd just be an open book to everybody about all my past problems. And that's not good. That's not good either. You know, people have to earn to hear your story. They have to earn your disclosure. And only in God's hands and in God's guidance can you truly know that they're ready to hear it. So, keep that in mind. Prayer for the day. I pray that I may serve as a channel for God's power to come into the lives of others. I pray that I may try to understand them. That's what it's all about. Just being God's channel, God's instrument. I choose not to say God's tool. But same. It's just semantics. God's instrument. You know? And in God's hands, my dark past is the greatest possession that I have. Oof! Man, it chokes me up sometimes when I think about it, but it's awesome. It's awesome. So keep coming back, y'all. Love you. Look up, aim up, and rise up. Have a great day.